Baby, please, just let me put in the tip. I won't go all the way, Alex said as he moved closer to Maria's hospital bed. His voice was low but filled with urgency. You're my wife, and I've told you this many times. You should open your legs for me whenever I ask, no matter where we are or what time it is. Maria slowly opened her eyes, looking pale and exhausted from the procedure she had just undergone the day before. Her body was aching, and she didn't have the strength to argue. She frowned slightly, pulling the thin hospital blanket over her legs. Alex, she whispered softly, her voice trembling with disbelief, though she wasn't entirely surprised. Alex sighed and moved even closer, placing his hand on her shoulder. I'm talking about us, Maria. You're my wife. Isn't it my right? We've been married for 4 years, and it feels like forever since I've been with you. With Maria's heart felt heavy as she pushed herself up a little, wincing from the sharp pain in her abdomen. Alex, this is a hospital, for God's sake, she said, her voice shaky. I'm recovering. How can you even think about that right now? It doesn't matter where we are, Alex replied firmly, his voice getting louder. You're my wife. I've waited long enough. I'm just asking for the tip. I won't go all the way. Tears welled up in Maria's eyes, her lips trembling. Alex, I just had a procedure. I can barely move, and this is what you're thinking about? What's wrong with you? Alex stood up, frustration clear on his face. What's wrong with me? No, what's wrong with you? You always have an excuse, Maria. First, it was the pregnancy, then the baby, and now this. What about me? Don't I matter? Before Maria could respond, the door opened and a nurse walked in. She immediately sensed the tension in the room. Her eyes moved from Alex's tense posture to Maria's tear-streaked face. Is everything okay in here? The nurse asked, her voice calm but firm. Alex hesitated, glancing between the nurse and Maria. We're fine, he said weakly. No, we're not, Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. She looked at the nurse with pleading eyes. He won't leave me alone. He just doesn't listen. The nurse stepped closer, her presence bringing a sense of calm to the room. She gently placed a comforting hand on Maria's arm. Sir, your wife needs rest and support right now, not pressure. I think it's best if you step outside for a moment. Alex opened his mouth to argue, but stopped himself. His shoulders slumped, guilt flashing across his face. Without another word, he turned and left the room. Maria let out a shaky breath, the nurse's reassuring hand still resting gently on her arm. You're safe now, the nurse said gently, her voice soft and comforting. Maria nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks as the reality of what had just happened sank in. Her mind drifted back to when she first met Alex. It was at her cousin's wedding, a bright, lively afternoon filled with music and the delicious aroma of jollof rice in the air. Maria was sitting with her cousins, laughing at an inside joke, when she noticed a tall man confidently walking toward their table. He had a wide, charming smile and a playful sparkle in his eyes. Hello, ladies, Alex greeted, his deep voice cutting through the lively chatter around them. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I couldn't help noticing the most beautiful woman in the room. His eyes were fixed on Maria. Maria felt her cheeks warm as her cousins giggled and nudged her to respond. Trying to be polite, she said, Thank you, but I'm just here to enjoy the wedding. But Alex didn't give up easily. A beautiful woman like you deserves more than just to enjoy the wedding. How about a dance with me? Maria hesitated. She wasn't sure how she felt about his bold approach, but there was something magnetic about his confidence. Her cousins whispered encouragement, and eventually, she agreed. All right, just one dance. On the dance floor, Alex's charm shone even more. He twirled her gracefully, his moves confident but not overwhelming. They chatted as they danced, and Maria was surprised by how funny and engaging he was. By the end of the song, she was smiling at his jokes and feeling unexpectedly at ease. You have a beautiful smile, Alex said as the music faded. I'd love to see it again. Can I call you sometime? Maria hesitated again, but something about his persistence and warmth made her nod. She gave him her number, thinking there was no harm in getting to know him better, even if it didn't lead to anything serious. The next day, Alex didn't just send a text, he called. Maria was surprised. Their conversation flowed effortlessly as he asked about her job, her hobbies, and her family. He seemed genuinely interested, and she found herself laughing and opening up to him more than she expected. Over the following weeks, Alex continued to impress her. He planned thoughtful dates, always making her feel special. He brought her flowers, complimented her intelligence, and treated her like she was the center of his world. Maria's friends and family teased her about her new admirer, saying she'd finally met a real man. At the time, Maria believed she had found her Prince Charming. Alex was everything she thought she wanted in a partner. Confident, successful, and attentive. She didn't notice the small red flags, like the way he always wanted to decide where they went on dates or how he subtly steered conversations towards his preference. Back then, it seemed like he was just being a thoughtful partner, someone who wanted to take care of her. A few months into their relationships, Maria started noticing little things about Alex that made her uncomfortable. At first, they seemed harmless, quirks she thought were part of his personality. But over time, they became harder to ignore. One evening, they were planning to attend a friend's birthday party. Maria had picked out a bright red dress that hugged her figure beautifully. She was excited about how confident and happy she felt in it. But when Alex saw her, his expression changed. "Red is a bit too loud, don't you think?" he said, frowning slightly. "Why don't you wear that blue dress I like? You look more elegant in it." Maria hesitated. She loved the red dress, but she didn't want to upset Alex. "I thought this looked nice," she said softly. "It does," Alex said, but his tone was unconvincing. "I just think the blue one is more appropriate." Reluctantly, Maria changed into the blue dress. At the party, Alex complimented her. But Maria couldn't shake the feeling that she had lost a small part of herself by giving in. As their relationship progressed, more moments like this began to happen. Alex always wanted to decide where they went on dates, saying things like, "I know the best place." When Maria suggested trying a new restaurant or going to a movie she wanted to see, Alex would brush it off, saying, "We'll go next time." But next time never came. Alex also had a way of dismissing her opinions in subtle ways. If she shared an idea or a thought, he would smile and say, "That's good," as if opinion weren't serious or worth considering. Maria began to feel small in those moments, but she convinced herself it wasn't a big deal. After all, Alex loved her, didn't he? He brought her flowers, took her on dates, and always told her how beautiful she was. That was enough, wasn't it? One day, Maria's best friend Rose pulled her aside. "Maria, don't you think Alex is a little controlling?" she asked cautiously. "Controlling?" Maria laughed nervously. "No, he likes things a certain way. He's very thoughtful." Rose raised an eyebrow. "Thoughtful is one thing, but it's so like he doesn't let you make any decision." Maria brushed off Rose's concern, but her words lingered in the back of her mind. Over time, she began to notice how often she adjusted herself to fit Alex's preferences. She changed the way she dressed, the way she talked, and even the way she thought about certain things, but she told herself it was just normal. Relationships were about compromise, right? Alex's controlling behavior extended beyond decisions about date and clothes. He started keeping track of Maria's time. If she spent too long at work or with her friends, he would question her, saying things like, "Don't you want to spend time with me?" Or, "I'm the one who matters most, right?" Maria felt suffocated at times, but Alex's charm always pulled her back in. He knew how to apologize just enough to make her doubt her feelings. He would bring her gifts, take her to fancy dinners, and tell her how much he loved her. And each time, Maria would push her doubts aside, convincing herself that Alex's behavior was just his way of showing love. Maria and Alex's wedding was a dream come true for Maria. The church was filled with flowers. Their families and friends gathered to celebrate. And Alex couldn't stop smiling. He held her hand tightly during the vows. His voice stayed as he promised to love and cherish her forever. Maria felt like the luckiest woman in the world. And for a while, everything felt perfect. Their honeymoon in Zanzibar was magical. They stayed in a luxurious beach resort, and Alex spared no expense. They laughed, swam, and shared quiet moments watching the sunset. Maria felt like they were building a beautiful foundation for their marriage. But the honeymoon phase didn't last long. When they returned home, Alex's controlling side began to surface more strongly. He started with small comments like, "Why don't you ask me before making plans with your friends?" Or, "I don't like when you are too late." At first, Maria thought he was just adjusting to married life. But the comments became more frequent and sharper. One evening, Maria had plans to visit her best friend Rose for dinner. She had already told Alex about it earlier in the week. But as she got ready, he frowned. "You're going out again?" he asked. His tone clipped. "It's just dinner with Rose," Maria said, sleeping on her shoes. "I told you about this." Alex leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. "You've been spending a lot of time with her lately. Don't you think you should prioritize your husband?" Maria paused, confused. "Alex, it's just one evening. I'll be back in a few hours." Alex sighed, shaking his head. "Fine, go. But don't forget who you are married to." They waved tongue, but Maria brushed them off. She didn't want to start an argument. That night, she left for dinner, feeling uneasy. But she told herself, Alex will understand in time. As the months went by, Alex's expectation became more demanding. He wanted her to cook dinner every night, even when she was exhausted from work. If she suggested ordering takeout, he would frown and say, "A wife should take care of her husband. Isn't that what marriage is about?" Alex's control extended to their finances as well. He insisted on managing their joint account, saying he was better with money. Whenever Maria wanted to buy something for herself, he would question it. "Do you really need it? Don't you think we should save for the future?" he would say, even though he had no problem spending money on himself. The worst part, however, was the intimacy. Alex seemed to believe that marriage gave him unlimited access to Maria's body. He would often approach her late at night, even when she was visibly tired. "I'm your husband," he would say, his tone firm. "This is part of being married. It's not something you can say no to." Maria hated how those words made her feel, like an object, not a partner. But she rarely said no. She didn't want to upset him. And she told herself it was her duty as a wife. She thought things could get better with time, but instead, the pressure only grew. When Maria found out she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She couldn't wait to tell Alex, imagining how excited he would be. And at first, he was. He hugged her tightly, his face lighting up with pride. "I'm going to be a dad," he said, grinning. "This is the best news ever." For a little while, things felt better. Alex was attentive and sweet, making sure Maria ate well and went to her doctor's appointment. But as her pregnancy progressed, his old behavior resurfaced. One evening, Maria was lying on the couch, her back aching and her feet were swollen. She had spent the day cleaning the house because Alex didn't like seeing clutter. When he walked in, instead of thanking her, he frowned. "Why isn't dinner ready?" he asked. Setting down his briefcase, Maria sat up, wincing. "Alex, I've been cleaning all day. I was hoping we could order something tonight." Alex frowned deeply. "Cleaning is good, but a wife's first responsibility is her husband. Don't let the pregnancy make you forget that." Maria stared at him, her heart sinking. "Alex, I'm exhausted," she said softly. "Can't you understand that?" Alex sighed and walked to the kitchen. "Fine, I'll make something myself," he said, but his tone made it clear he was very annoyed. As Maria's pregnancy progressed, she began experiencing sharp pains in her lower abdomen. Her doctor told her to rest as much as possible, warning her that overexertion could lead to complications. But Alex didn't seem to take it seriously. One night, as Maria lay in bed struggling to find a comfortable position, Alex climbed in beside her. He placed a hand on her shoulder and kissed her neck. "Alex," Maria whispered, her voice tired. "I'm not feeling well. I just want to sleep," Alex sighed, his frustration evident. "Maria, you've been saying no a lot lately. I'm your husband, remember? Don't you think I have needs too?" "Alex, please," Maria said, her voice was breaking. "I'm in pain. Can't you just let me rest?" But Alex didn't stop. He leaned closer, his tone growing firmer. "You always have an excuse. First, it was the morning sickness. Now is this. How much longer am I supposed to wait?" Maria felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't have the energy to argue. She gave in, hoping it would be over quickly. But the next morning, the pain in her abdomen was unbearable. She was rushed to the hospital, where the doctor informed her that she had developed complications. They performed an emergency procedure to save both her and the baby. As Maria lay in the hospital bed, weak and scared, she couldn't stop thinking about how she had gotten there. She realized that her silence and sacrifices had brought her to this point, and she vowed that things had to change. As Maria lay in the hospital bed, staring at the sterile white ceiling, her body felt weak and battered, but her mind was racing. The sharp pain that had gripped her the night before was gone, replaced by a dull ache and a deeper, heavier sadness. She turned her head to the side and saw her little baby sleeping peacefully in the bed beside her. He was so small, so fragile, and yet he was the only thing giving her the strength to hold on. Alex walked into the room, his face a mixture of worry and guilt. He carried a bouquet of flowers, but Maria barely looked at it. Her heart clenched as she remembered the events that had led her to the hospital. "How are you feeling?" Alex asked softly. Maria turned her head away, staring at the window. "I'm alive," she said flatly. Alex sighed, pulling a chair to the bed. "Maria, I didn't mean for this to happen. He paused, searching for the right words. "I didn't know it was this serious." Maria turned back to him, her eyes filled with tears and anger. "You didn't know? Alex, I told you I was in pain. I begged you to let me rest, but you didn't listen. You never listen." Her voice hit Alex like a slap, and he leaned back to his face pale. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said weakly. I thought it was normal for a husband to expect." "Expect what?" Maria interrupted, her voice trembling. "To expect me to give you my body even when I'm in pain. To expect me to ignore my own health just to make you happy. Alex, this isn't love, this is selfishness." Alex sat silently, his hand clenched into his fist. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he couldn't. Deep down, he knew Maria was right. He had been selfish, blind to her pain and needs. The tension between Alex and Maria didn't ease after the hospital incident. Maria focused all her energy on recovering and taking care of her son, barely speaking to Alex unless it was absolutely necessary. She couldn't bring herself to forgive him, not yet. The pain of his ways and actions was still too fresh. Alex, on the other hand, felt lost. He knew he had hurt Maria deeply, but he didn't know how to make it right. He had always thought of himself as a good husband. He worked hard, provided for his family, and loved Maria. But now, he was beginning to realize that love wasn't enough, not if it came without respect. That night, Alex lay awake staring at the ceiling. He thought about everything Maria had said, and for the first time, he thoroughly understood the depth of the damage he had caused. He thought about his father, a man who had always demanded obedience and control, and his mother, who had silently endured it all. Alex had always admired his father, but now he realized he didn't want to be like him. The next day, Alex made an appointment with a therapist. He didn't tell Maria right away. He wanted to show her through his actions, not just his words, that he was serious about changing. As Alex sat in the therapist's office, he began to unpack years of toxic belief and behavior. It wasn't easy, but he knew it was necessary, for Maria and for himself. Alex's face therapy session was harder than he expected. He sat in the room, shifting uncomfortably in the leather chair as the therapist, an older man named Dr. Carlo, waited patiently for him to speak. The silence felt heavy, but Alex didn't know where to start. How could he explain years of behavior that, until recently, he hadn't even realized was wrong? "You are here because you want to make some changes," Dr. Carlo said gently, breaking the silence. "That's a good first step. Why don't you start telling me what brought you here?" Alex took a deep breath, his fingers gripping the armrest of the chair. "My wife," he said finally. "She says I've been selfish, controlling, that I don't respect her boundaries." Dr. Carlo noted, "And what do you think?" Alex hesitated. "I think she's right," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I didn't realize it until recently. I thought I was just being a good husband." "And what does being a good husband mean to you?" Dr. Carlo asked, leaning forward slightly. Alex frowned, staring at the floor. "I don't even know anymore," he said. "Honestly, I thought it meant providing for my family, taking care of them. But Maria, my wife, she says I've been taking more than I've been giving. And now I see it. The things I've done, the way I've treated her, is not okay." Over the next few months, Alex worked hard to rebuild Maria's trust. He didn't just rely on words. He showed her through his actions. He took over more responsibilities at home, making sure Maria had time to rest and recharge. He listened to her when she spoke, really listened, without interrupting or dismissing her feelings. Seeing how Alex had changed, Maria smiled faintly as she thought about how far they had come. There were still moments of doubt, still times when she felt the weight of her past, but those moments were fewer now. She had learned to speak up, to say no when she needed to, and to prioritize her own well-being without guilt. And Alex had learned to accept that. She turned away from the window, her thoughts shifting to the countless women who might still be struggling in silence. Women who, like her, had been taught that love meant sacrifice, that saying no was wrong, even when their bodies and hearts begged them to. To those women, Maria would say this: it's okay to say no. Your worth isn't measured by how much you give or how much you endure. You deserve to be seen, heard, and respected, even in marriage, especially in marriage. Maria's story is a reminder that marriage isn't about controlling or entitlement. It's about partnership. It's about listening, respecting boundaries, and understanding that love doesn't mean always saying yes. To the woman reading this, you have the right to say no. Your body, your heart, and your mind are your own, and no one, not even your husband, has the right to make you feel otherwise. Love is about mutual respect, not obligation. It's okay to stand up for yourself, even when it feels hard. You deserve a love that uplifts you, not the one that drains you. And to the man reading this, love isn't about faking. It's about giving, listening to your partner, respect her needs, and remember that a strong marriage is one where both partners feel valued and supported. Let this story be a call to action for all of us to do better, to build relationships that are rooted in respect, and to teach the next generation that saying no is a right, not a rebellion. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's start a conversation about what real love looks like and how we can all work to build it together. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to share this story with your family and your friends whom I love to see them.